Well, they say that life is people and that people are angels and that angels are devils and the devils are me and you.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to another edition of Life is People. Well, it's a great honour of mine to be joined tonight by a very dear friend of mine, Jennifer Knight, who has been a long time coming around since we last had our conversation. So before we go any further, how's things for you today, Jen?
Wonderful. I am rightfully exhausted and proud of it.
It's always a good place to be. It's always better to be busy than bored, is what I say. So, one of the things before we sort of go any further, really, for people maybe watching for the first time, just give us a brief overview of kind of like what you do, really.
Well, I've been uh, I've been writing mostly freelance. I had a weekly column in a local publication, a local newspaper, as it relates to legalization. And with that experience, writing about the legalization of marijuana in the United States, I came into contact with a lot of attorneys and law enforcement and people in those capacities, and I've stayed in touch with them. And currently what I'm working on are high profile homicide cases in the state of Colorado where the victims have been women and children in domestic situations. And I don't want to go too much into that because it is dark and it is heavy, but it is still a creative project. I may not have known in the beginning exactly what I was getting myself into, but once I commit to something, I have to see it all the way through, no matter how much it it takes. And if not me and the people that I'm working with, then who else? I am trying to be incredibly objective, and I'm gathering the stories of others. It's not necessarily me having all the answers and sitting down and writing a book because I'm some sort of genius. It's my ability to reach out to all types of people, whether that's law enforcement attorneys, private investigators, politicians, the defendants themselves, pen pals of the defendants. I mean, I try to just cover every possible, side of the thing and try to get at it and do it in a way that's not done unless it's done by someone who's independent and following their own rules. I have respect for the rules. It's not that I don't. I would just like to do it differently and get away with it. So that's what we're going to do.
Okay, in this sort of creative process that you've just kind of briefly touched upon, and it's something we previously discussed, but I'd be fascinated really to if you to allude more on. You just mentioned then about it has its dark side. Now, how do you, as a creative writer, how do you balance that up with actually the day-to-day life? I mean, how do you deal with that?
Well, weed helps. Um, no, in that way, I do have to decompress and turn it off, which is harder than it sounds. And these are real people and real lives and real things that have happened, and it would be impossible for it not to, as I become very sensitive when I'm working, when I'm writing. At times it feels like my insides are on my outsides, and I'm just that sensitive. um, so the number one thing that has helped me from the beginning, and I've been working on this project for several years now, actually. The people that I surround myself with, or surround myself, uh, Raldo is huge as far as keeping me grounded and not letting me fall off the edge. You know, um, Pirate Larry, who you also know, is a huge help to me. I can reach out to either of them in any moment when things get too dark and too heavy and I begin to lose my shit, which I do. I also believe it's worth it, you know, or it will be when this thing does come out. So those are the main two people, but I have several others. I'm working with an editor who is also he's become a good personal friend. His name is Jay Cowan, and I actually have one of his books right here. I don't know if you can see it. Does that show, or is it
No, perfect.
too much of a glare? So this is a biography that he wrote about his personal friend, Hunter Thompson, and he's editing my project and has refused pay, the same way that Raldo is illustrating my project and has refused pay. There are so many people that just want to help me with this thing, and that's the main thing that keeps me grounded. And then I guess the second thing would be marijuana. Not during, you know, I smoke during the process when you see all these papers behind me on the wall. During the brainstorming process, when I'm grabbing things out of the ether, you know, I'll do that stoned. But then I always come back sober and go through it about 5 more times, rearrange it, and then get stoned again and look at it and do it all over again if I need to. It helps me zero in, I guess, energetically on whether or not I'm on the right track, and whether or not I have tightened it up enough. Because one of the things, especially, so I'm writing about 3 separate cases, and the one in the middle is the case against a woman called Letitia Stauch. And it is all over the place, and it's very confusing. And she is, you know, she purposely misleads people. So it's been a chase. And I'm not out to say whether she's guilty or innocent. That's not my job. I'm not a crime fighter. I'm currently a crime writer. It's my job to take the chaos and organize it in such a way, and you know, I reach out to the attorneys who, you know, have an entirely separate language, all of their own. It's not exactly English, but I translate, you know, the attorney speak into a way that can be understood and, you know, comprehended. One of the greatest compliments I've received since I started letting people read parts of what I have done so far, which is quite a bit. One of the greatest compliments I received was from a lady who is now a friend of mine, and she's dyslexic, and she read chapter 1, and she could not get over the fact that she was able to read it and comprehend it and hang on to it, and it didn't seem like a chore. That's a huge compliment. I've also reached out to, there's a gentleman at Stanford who kind of, you know, he'll read things and give me notes. His name is James Fadiman. He was the first and only person at Stanford to receive a doctorate in psychedelic studies. And he is an incredible humanitarian and a wonderful person. He wrote a book called The Psychedelic Explorer's Guide, and he encourages things like microdosing, but doing it the right way with setting, and substance. You know, the key to any of these substances is education and respect for the substance and what it has the ability to help with. It's not a cure-all. It's not an answer, but there are ways to use it professionally that can really be a benefit. You know, professionally, of course, is only one way, but you know, that's how I've been using it. So you know, I reached out to him, and he had similar notes. You know, this incredibly well-educated scholar basically said the same thing that you know, my friend did, who is, normal, blue collar, dyslexic person. It hit both of them the same way and with the same force. And to me, that's as well received as you can be. I have a second editor. Her name is Desiree Franco, and she's, her degrees are in business. I, of course, have no degree, but again, I've surrounded myself with people who, all of us put together, it's going to be one hell of a book. It's going to be one hell of a book. And it's not necessarily about these cases as much, you know already what a fan of freedom and discretion I am. When I was writing about the legalization of marijuana in the United States, I wasn't writing about pot. I was writing about freedom and the power to choose what you want to do in any given situation, which is how I define discretion. And that's really not much different than what I'm writing about here, except, these are true stories that are, that are homicide cases, but I'm writing about due process in the criminal justice system. And I'm trying to get as many, disparate sources as I can. And I have a wonderful group of people. And really that's what helps me the most. And Jay in particular, having, he lived on Owl Farm, which is, that was Hunter Thompson's fortified compound outside of Aspen. He lived on the same property, I think, for 20 years. And his biggest advice to me, of course, is don't be like Hunter. And speaking of distraction, one of the things that he told me recently is that Hunter used to do anything and everything to avoid writing, whether that was blowing things up or getting arrested or, the distraction is real. I'm also a mother and an employee with a day job that recently, because of, the state of things with COVID and everything else, unemployment, I'm in Durango, Colorado, and my day job is running a motel, and Durango is a tourist town, and it's a summer tourism town. And so with nobody really traveling last year due to COVID, everyone had cabin fever. And so people who wouldn't normally travel did. And so we had at least twice as many visitors to the town, but we had probably half as many employees who are willing to work the jobs that it takes to run a tourist town. The town I live in, there are two types of income, I guess. I don't want to say two types of people because that's absolutely not true. But there are what seem to be the uber rich, and then there are people like myself who have to work 3 jobs to make it because the rent's so expensive. I think the population here is 18,000, but a lot of those have houses elsewhere, Texas or California or wherever. So it's been a real difficult summer. And there were probably 2.5 months where I didn't write at all. And me not writing at all is worse than getting lost in the rabbit hole with dark and heavy. And I'm not okay if I'm not writing, much like musicians, much like, it's, and that's another thing that I really bonded with Jay, my editor, over, is he understands that I don't write because I want to. I write because I need to. I have to write. I have to. One of my concerns is getting trapped in what people are calling the true crime genre, and you and I, last time we spoke, we talked about the perils of getting trapped in doing one sort of thing, and I don't want that to happen because that will also kill my creativity. which is why I choose to remain independent. And one of the most important things of any project I work on is independence. So I've got a deadline of Sunday night. I know that we're not doing this live, so this will probably come out after the article's been published even. So I've got it. This is Wednesday that we're recording, and my deadline is Sunday, and then the preliminary hearing for Ms. Stauk is Thursday and Friday. And I'm going to be sending that stuff over. I kind of lost my train of thought there.
Just mention about how you got to work Wednesday for a deadline, Sunday, and about you mentioned about your fear of not writing or not creating is greater than your fear of actually being in a dark place. Right.
I don't know. So I've got yesterday. Do forgive me because I really am tired. But it's okay. It's worth it. It's worth it. We do these things to ourselves for the art, you know. So we've got yesterday I held a great interview with an attorney who used to be senior deputy public defender, and she was the senior deputy public defender in Arapahoe County when there was a case going on about James Holmes. I don't know if you know who that is, but this was the theater shooting in Aurora, Colorado, when the Batman movie came out. It was several years ago. She has been an amazing help to me, and we're going to get together and do another interview as soon as the preliminary hearing ends. And I will write that up into the article and send it to both editors, get their notes, get it back. Oh, I remember why I was saying that. So my goal is to publish it 2 places. It's going to be part of the book, but not exactly. It'll be changed just enough to be used as almost a way to drive people to my website to pre-order the book. But I will also be selling it to the publications. So the first publication that I want to sell this particular article to is Rolling Stone. And I have not written for them before, but I do have some pretty good connections that can help me get there if the work comes out as well as I think the work will come out. And based on how I feel right now, I know that I've put enough into it and I have enough people helping that there's no reason that they won't absolutely take it and run with it and publish it. And I would also like to have it published by a publication, a newspaper publication called the Colorado Sun. And that is a journalist-owned publication. So it's as close to independent as you can get in a newspaper. That's not, the alternative weekly sort of rag, So I'd like to publish it in Rolling Stone and the Colorado Sun. And those are the only 2 places I'd like to publish before putting it out in book form on the website. However, it's real tricky writing about, even though I'm writing about due process and not necessarily, these people's lives and things of that nature. It's tricky because people accuse, one of the first horrible things that was said to me, what was it? Oh, I was told, this was about a year ago, I was accused of, and I quote, picking the pockets of the dead. Now you can imagine how that would hit a human being such as myself. Now the person who said this, they probably don't even realize that I am a human being, I guess every journalist or writer is some sort of succubus in a lot of people's minds. And definitely not true. You know that. But it hit me hard, being accused of picking the pockets of the dead. And in that moment, while I've still got the email on the screen, in that moment, I decided that what I would do now, it's not out of line for me to want to be paid for my hard work. That's not, that's, I think that's okay. I'm working hard. But I also, especially with my fondness for freedom and discretion and independence, I'm going to make the book available electronically at crimecurious.com. When I am finished with the book, you'll be able to go to crimecurious.com and read the entire thing for free. And if you do like it and you do recognize the hard work and you do feel like it's important for people to be paid for their hard work, please buy a physical copy of the book. But it will be available for free. And I think that's important. And I have had people pre-ordering already through an independent publishing company that Raldo and I set up in the state of Colorado. It's a simple LLC. And Jay, who has decades of experience in the publishing industry, is going to help us publish it. And not necessarily independently. We're going to be using as many of the tools of the big guys as we can. And we even have some of those people helping us. I'm not willing to drop those names at this point. But there aren't many big publishing companies and agents thereof who are willing to help people who want to remain independent, and we found some. And I have so many resources at my fingertips. I am so lucky. It's been great. So the reason I keep looking down, I'm fiddling with playing cards. And the reason for that is this article. I'm building it in such a way that as you're reading it, it's going to come, it's built around the way you would play a game of Texas Hold'em, because poker is an important part of the defendant's story as to what happened to her 11-year-old stepson, who's the victim in the case. Apparently she was doing some illegal gambling, on cruise ships, and owed some people some money, and it's a whole big thing that I don't really want to get into. And for our purposes, and especially with Life as People, we'll stick to the creative process, right? But part of the creative process is engulfing myself, and I light candles, and I have a playlist of certain music, and I'll watch movies over and over again, so this one very quickly became poker themed, sort of. You can, and it has to be written in such a way where you can read the article start to finish, backwards to forwards, and not know a thing about poker and still get a lot out of it. But if you do know about poker, then you get even more out of it, and same with the legal stuff. You can read it start to finish and backwards to forwards without knowing anything about attorneys or the law, or and still get a lot out of it. But if you do, you'll also pick up on all of those diamonds that are in there, thanks to the people I've reached out to. So shuffling cards, dealing hands that don't matter, lighting a candle. What are some of the movies that I've watched? The Gambler, of course. There was one point in court where she told the judge, when she wanted to represent herself and fire the public defender's office, she said that the reason she believed she would be able to represent herself in a high-profile homicide case was because she's really good at poker. And then she went further and she said, I know when to hold them and I know when to fold them. So here she's quoting music in the courtroom. It's roller coaster is putting it lightly. So there's really nobody better than me to cover it, because I think I do have the right kind of crazy. And that's the thing. you can be crazy and still have your feet firmly planted on the ground.
Yeah. No,
You know.
no, it's fascinating, Jim, because what you just sort of covered, and there's a lot to sort of take in of what you just said. Some of the sort of highlights that I really want to sort of kind of bounce back to you, really. Now, one of the things that many creative people I've spoken to, and I speak to myself as an artist, and I think it's very sort of relevant between an artist and a writer. We start off and we're looking at a blank screen or a blank canvas. And I'm fascinated really, where does your actual, because it's been discussed by many people over time in history, the Greeks would call it the muse, the flow state, that things just come. But when you're staring at that blank bit of paper, when you start off in this project, what is the very first thing you will do? I mean, it's different from when you're in a flow state, because it's almost kind of like, okay, I know what I'm building and I'm building on. But that very first step, so take yourself back to when you very first started this, and there you are, and you've got basically a blank, document in front of you. Or where do you start? Because I mention this because obviously people will be looking behind, and I'm sure they're like me, they're looking at all the little bits of word and the sheets and stuff like this. Is that an area you start on, or do you start on the keyboard and just go, right, I'm just going to write, get as much out, and then decipher every time? You give me sort of an insight into your actual process of actually physically getting this down on paper or on a laptop.
Sure. So I start with my canvas. So there are these things there. What you see on the wall behind me, they're giant Post-it notes with a sticky piece across the top. And I will take any blank space on the walls surrounding me and I will cover it with these notes. And then I use, they're across the room here, but the biggest, fattest Sharpie I can get in a bunch of different colors. And so I've got these blank pages all over the wall. I've got the Sharpies in my pocket. And well, I don't have to qualify it. You understand if I sound weird. So I realize that these pages are blank, right? And what I try to do is I try to switch places with the blank pages. And I try to imagine myself as being blank and them trying to tell me something, where the blank pages are actually speaking to me rather than me speaking to them, I guess. And then I will turn on some sort of music, not something that I've picked. I will try to, I can use the television to do it as well. And I know what I'm looking for and what I want to write about. And I'll grab books and I'll open them to random pages. And a word will catch me or an idea will catch me. And then I slap it on the wall as soon as I can. And sometimes it sticks and sometimes it doesn't. But, I could turn on the radio, and whether it's an advertisement for the newest vehicle or whether it's a song from the 70s or whatever it is, something will ping, for lack of a better word. Mm-hmm. And I just do as much of that as I can until it's all over the walls. And then I smoke a joint. And then I listen to music, light the candle. I reach out to Raldo. Raldo's illustrations are a huge part of my process. And that was something that, and I've been working with him for years now. But that was something that was hard for us to get to at first, because he's always told me, if you can think it, I can ink it. That's what he says. And so he wanted me to tell him what I wanted him to draw. And it doesn't really work that way, because sometimes I don't know when I'm writing well until I can throw myself into one of his illustrations, even if it's just a rough sketch. Like right now, he's got a sketch of my hand. So I told him that, we needed to do these poker themed illustrations for the article I'm working on right now. And so initially I took playing cards and, I had them in my hand and I took a photo and then sent that to him. And then he drew something similar, but we wanted it to be Letitia's hand. And with a tattoo of her prisoner ID number on her hand as she's playing poker with the district attorney, which we have to be careful because, you know, we're cartooning a homicide case in essence, but we are careful and it's not disrespectful and it is artistic and it is nonfiction. Um, but anyhow, so now that has evolved as we continue on. So he sends me the rough sketch, and then I send him some writing, and then we redo it. So initially, I had sent him, when poker became involved, I sent him a photo of my hand with 5 cards in it. But the poker she was playing was Texas Hold'em, so she's only going to have 2 cards in her hand. So after you and I get off of the call tonight, I'm going to call him, and then we're going to revisit that initial illustration with Texas Hold'em. And then I'm going to go about a writing session tonight, and then at 9 a.m. is the first day of her preliminary hearing, which they'll only present enough evidence to justify continuing to hold her in custody. And she's been there for, let's see, he went missing 1 year and 9 months ago. She was arrested in March. So she's been in county jail for about 1.5 years. And it would have happened a lot sooner, but her team of public defenders forced her to have 2 mental competency evaluations, not so that she could claim to be not guilty by reason of insanity, just that she's not competent to stand trial because she was so difficult to work with her attorneys. And then she fired the attorneys, and here I go off into the details. Anyhow, so tonight there will be candles and music and a joint and a speakerphone conversation with Raldo and a new illustration and a write-up of the interview I did with the attorney yesterday. And I can't wait for you to see the article. Shit, I can't wait to see the article myself. I mean, it's not, people expect me to know what I'm doing through the entire process, and I don't. I mean, it unfolds in front of me. And that's one of the things that you and I talked about before, is the real tricky thing about being a good writer is that in order to be successful, you have to make it look easy, even if it almost kills you. The final product looks like I just sat down and, you know, but I guess that's how magic works sometimes. I don't know. It is hard work, but you have to make it look easy in order for it to be received the way that it needs to be received, and do the work in society that it needs to do. And that's the real thing, you know, the audience for this project. That's the most important piece. I mean, it's for them. I'm not writing this for myself, you know, and it has to be a reflection. One of the things I really want to drive home with this project is people's response, society's response to criminal behavior. Because there are a whole lot of people who would love to just burn these people at the stake right now without seeing the evidence. They've heard enough, they've seen enough. And that's a problem. That's a problem. We have something in the United States called the Constitution. In my opinion, it's pretty important. But it's amazing right now how many people, if they feel like they're in the right, don't want to take the time for due process. They want people punished, and they want them punished now. Until it's them, you know. Today it's these defendants. What if you get accused of something? Will due process be important then? How much should it take in order to lock humans in cages for the rest of their lives? You know, so I really want to speak to those people who don't understand, even when they think they're right, due process is still very important. But also, we need to hold the courts and the representatives of, well, they don't represent the court, they represent the people, don't they? The district attorney's office is an elected position, and they're meant to represent us. So another really big part of this project is talking about, we, the people's access to information, freedom of information, and what's held from us and why. And I do understand why some things are held from us, and I do understand that you don't want to put out information that could be harmful to the process, that cause something to end in a mistrial, and someone that really did something as horrible as what these people are accused of. You don't want. I'm not a fan of cages, but you find out somebody did, and you can prove that somebody did some of these heinous things. That's different, but we need to prove it. Two of the cases I'm writing about, other than the people being missing, there was no evidence of murder or their death even. There, no body. That's becoming more and more common, prosecuting when, there's not even a body or any evidence of murder. So it's a whole bunch of things, and to pull, basically pulling them out of the ether is what I do when I sit down and I start the process. And I try to take things from, it's not coming from me. I don't just take the pen to the paper and the things that are on my mind. Now that does kick in after, I would say, 1 or 2 sessions of taking things out of things that come to me randomly. Somebody could be walking by and having, they could be walking by talking on the phone, and it could have nothing to do with anything that I'm writing about, but something will ping and I'll write it on the wall, and then I'll sort of, I guess, meditate on it, I guess. And then I take the stuff off the wall, and then I have a spiral notebook ready and empty and waiting for me to take the things off the wall. And then I get it into the spiral notebook, and I leave some things out, and and then I just see how it, I guess, sort of calls to me in that way. And you would be amazed at how things will just come together, and so then from the spiral notebook stage, then I go back to the wall. Only I write in a linear fashion where I've grouped the ideas together, sort of like you see behind me here, that, this is, it's, things are pretty much in order. They're still a little scattered, but, and that keeps me focused, because it's so easy to lose focus, especially when there's so many pieces and details and people and issues and events, and so then I go back to the paper, and then I take it the first digital round, and a lot of times I will do that. I have hidden pages on my website, and rather than using any sort of program, be it Google Docs or Microsoft Word or anything like that, I'll type it right into the website, because I want to see what it's going to look like, and that's for my eyes only. And then I'll turn it into a document that I can send to friends and editors and the people. Sometimes I will go too far and send it to too many people, and I'll get too much input, and I'll have to start over entirely, because even though they mean well, they might not understand why I'm, breaking this rule of writing. But I do understand that I am breaking a rule in it, and I want to know if it still works. But some of the people that I work with have been doing this for so long, one specific way, and there's no other way to do it, that they have a hard time. But we're all working together and we're all learning things. And I'm learning to tighten things up, and they're learning to loosen things up.
Yeah.
You know, and we'll meet in the middle, and I'll know when it's right by how it feels. Another really important part for me is once I do believe, after editing, after I've had my editors look at it, and they don't actually edit the document. I'll give them a version and they can make the suggestions, but then I sit down and basically start over. And by the time it's done, I've written it and rewritten it over and over, and I've scrutinized, you know, the placement of every single word and the importance of why each word is what it is, you know. Like we talked about with that Melville quote, genius all over the world stands hand in hand, and one shock of recognition runs the whole circle round. I used to say that wrong, because I would say genius all around the world, but around goes in the bottom half of the sentence, and it's genius all over the world, so that you're not using the word around twice. And those details are incredibly important. But anyway, so after I've rewritten after the notes of my editors, then I will ask someone in my presence. Usually it's my youngest son, who just turned 18 a couple weeks ago. Usually it's my youngest son, but I will ask him to, and I haven't shared anything with him at this point, you know, it'll be a fresh thing for him to read. And I ask him to read it out loud. And reading something aloud, someone who didn't write it, because you can get too deep into it and you can miss things entirely. It's hard sometimes for him to read it to me aloud, because it's natural for him to put pressure on himself to read it correctly. And that's not what I need. You know, he's not performing a piece. You know, I don't need him to read it correctly. It's actually more important to know where he stumbles. And if he stumbles, that's something that maybe I could adjust. You know, and then I like to have three people. I like to have three people read it aloud. And then I go back and edit it a final time after having it read aloud back to me, because that allows me to step out of it and get more into that important, you know, me being proud of it is less important than the audience. I mean, I'm naturally going to be proud of it, but you know, how the audience receives it and is able to read it. And it's different reading aloud than it is reading to yourself. But that is a really important part of my writing process, is having someone read the work aloud while I just sit back, you know, whether that's with a cigarette or, you know, whatever it is. I sit back and I hear someone read it for the first time, and that means a lot to me. And then I know, after I meditate on it one more time, then I know it's ready to put out into the world.
Yeah.
And another really hard part is letting go of it once I have put it out into the world. That's hard.
Yeah.
It's just like raising kids in that way, you know?
It is indeed, yeah. Now, I mean, what you're just discussing then, it's kind of going through my mind when I'm hearing you say this. Now, at some point before you start any process, there's always that fear. You know, you've got that fear of like, will I succeed? Should I do this? And it goes a bit to what you said about Hunter Thompson, all the distractions that us creatives can find. It's, you know, it's one of the, it's almost should be an Olympic sport, finding distractions, because we'll never get a medal because we're great at finding distractions. So if say, for example, you know, Jen, who's, you know, right now sitting in front of me, could go to the Jen 10 years ago, and the Jen 10 years ago, and, oh, but give me a list of reasons why you can't sit and write because of the fear, and I'm afraid of this. What would your self right now say to you, to a 10-year or 20-year younger person of yourself, and say how to overcome that fear of actually just jumping in and starting this process that you just discussed?
I guess I would explain the importance of failure, and I would ask myself to respect failure rather than fear it. And also, I guess, 35-year-old me compared to 45-year-old me doesn't fear failure. Also, I am my worst critic, and I am so hard on myself. And something that I think might be crap. Okay, so I guess I would hermit, and I would keep my writing to myself because it was never good enough. And I can't let anybody read this. I might be embarrassed. And then at the same time, I would be upset that people weren't taking me seriously as a writer. Like, oh yeah, sure, okay, but then I didn't have the guts to put my stuff out into the world because I never felt like it was good enough. And it was because of that fear. And I know now that my thinking might have been a little off and I was being too hard on myself. And I guess losing the fear and finding out that it doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter what I think of my own writing, and it's important for me to be okay with it. But the comfort of knowing that if it's done right, it will be received exactly how it's supposed to, and I can't control that. So the comments, like the email where they accused me of picking the pockets of the dead, those don't hurt as much as they used to, the negative comments. And I almost encourage negative comments now because I always ask myself, compared to what? If someone tells me I'm a horrible writer, compared to what? And if you're telling that I'm a horrible writer compared to some of the greats, I'm okay with that because that's probably the way it's supposed to be. And if I am able to work around those snares of people who need feel the need to keep others down, I could never get to where I'm going to be. I guess I had a professor at UCCS, which, I dropped out, but it was a wonderful experience, and I'm still in touch with a couple of my professors. I had a professor at UCCS who talked me into taking a mathematics class on infinity that was entirely over my head, and he disagreed with me. And I thought I was going to be able to sit in the back of the room and absorb and learn and be lucky to do so. Oh no, that's not what he had in mind. It was wonderful. It was a wonderful experience. But one of the things that he explained to me was one of the most simple concepts that ever had to be drilled into my thick skull. And that is, you're at a university to learn things that you don't already know. You're not supposed to have all the answers. You're supposed to be learning. This is not so as you're sitting in my classroom and I call upon you, what we're going through is the critical thinking, not you impressing the rest of the class with your knowledge of things that they're trying to learn. We're all trying to learn this stuff together. You're not supposed to know it already. So I've learned to beat myself up a lot less and understand the beauty of not having all the answers and always learning, So that's another thing that I would tell myself. And I learned that just over about 10 years ago. So just to be more kind to myself. You know, I also used to think that a good writer is a tortured writer, which is sometimes quite true, quite true, but it doesn't have to be the case. I also need to learn how to not be afraid of the audience. And I don't mean for the negativity, I mean for the positivity. And last time I voiced that concern, I think it was Raldo who told me, do not say that out loud again because you will manifest it. Do not be afraid of your audience, you'll be fine. You know, but you hear people talk about things that are so well received by the public, which I do believe will be the case. And you and I know that that's not because of my ego, it's because of the hard work. But I don't necessarily want to be famous in any way. I would much prefer the J.D. Salinger lifestyle. You know, not to say that I won't be out in the world, and not to say that I'll hide from the project. It's just that fame does not interest me. It terrifies me and I don't want it. And I think that going in, I've been cautious enough and I've surrounded myself by enough of the right people. Because not that it happens all the time, but it seems like fame is one of those things that might kill the creativity. And it is a fear that I have, and I promise I won't manifest it. I'm really going to try. But I thought, you know, the only reason I said it just now is because I thought that you might understand. And coming on Life as People, absolutely, anytime you want me to help you with anything that you're working on, or if I can help you in any way, I will. I was invited recently. One of my private investigators goes on the Nancy Grace show on a regular basis, and he asked me if I would like to do so. Absolutely not. No. No, thank you. No, please. No, please. But I think with everything that's been set up, I think I'll be able to navigate the success of the project and be able to do things in the future that I want to and not that I have to. You know, I don't care if somebody comes after me and offers me, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars to become a machine that whips out books as successful as this first one. And that's not the way this is going to happen. If I'm inspired to do another one along the same lines, I will. But because we will remain independent no matter what, I can say no. And money won't change my mind. I've been at zero and I've lived in poverty for a very long time. And you know what? It's sort of comfortable. So while I would like to not live in poverty any longer, I'm okay with it if I do. So that won't trick me into becoming a machine instead of the creative human being that I am. You could offer me the world and I'll say, no, thank you, I already have it. And who knows what I'm going to do next. Raldo and I have some plans for some graphic novels. I don't know if you remember my K-Dog character. He's coming back. He's coming back. We're working on some cases for him to solve in a graphic novel. I want to be able to do whatever I want.
Yes.
Get away with it. You know, one of Hunter Thompson's quotes is Hemingway showed me I could want to be a writer and get away with it. You know, and he doesn't expand on what it is, but, you know, so I, you know, as a sort of rip off of that is Thompson showed me I could want to be a writer and get away with it.
Yeah.
You know, I feel very lucky to have access to people that I've reached out to, and to have them be willing to help me when I feel, I guess, undeserving of the love that I've received from strangers across the universe. I'm getting more and more comfortable with it, and I do now feel that it's okay, and I can walk through this thing with dignity and grace, and accept the gifts that the universe has given me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And
Jen, you just
who
mentioned. Sorry, you just mentioned you don't really know any of your future plans, and so I'm just thinking, can we expect like a romantic Boozer Mills sort of like romance novel coming out of you?
who knows? Who knows? I doubt it. I doubt it. I doubt it. There was something on Facebook the other day, and it was a question, and it was your something about your wedding. Your wedding will be themed based on the last television show that you watched, and I had to laugh out loud because it was American Horror Story. I'm a huge fan of Ryan Murphy, and I had to laugh because I don't know, I kind of feel like that's what it might be. So romance novel / psychological thriller / horror / you know, who knows? I don't know. I don't know what it's going to be, but I will know when it comes to me, and I accept it. And you know, we kind of mentioned the muse earlier, and I don't necessarily have an honest understanding of what the muse is, but I do know that in my life I have been, inspiration sometimes comes to me gently and quietly, but most times it's aggressive and forceful, and I have to fight to ignore it. What happens is, you know, that inspiration, this sounds tacky, but I have been known to explain to friends that inspiration is sometimes a bit of a whore, and if you ignore her, she will go to the next person to get what she wants from you. And I've seen it happen over and over again, where I have fought it because I didn't feel like I could handle it, and I fought something that I was inspired to do, and 1 year later, 2 years later, I see it out in the world by the person who it finally got to, you know, and I'm still happy, you know. I don't, I'm happy that it found the person for it, you know. But this one got me and held me for several different reasons, and I knew in the beginning I had no idea what was going to unfold, but I knew, I felt it. I felt the size of it, I felt the strength of it, I felt the power of it, and it hadn't even happened yet. It's just that inspiration and I came to terms, and I'm writing nonfiction, you know. I'm not making this stuff up, you know, but it's still creative writing. And as things started to unfold with these cases and the things that happened, and the way that they're all coming together, sometimes I roll my eyes, and sometimes I just sit back and smile, because I didn't know details of what was going to happen, but I knew what was calling to me, and the power and the size and the strength, and you know how much weight I place on humility. There is nothing worse than a creative with a huge ego. I can't do it. I run like you. I mean, I can't do it, and I never want to be that. And I've seen it happen to a couple of my friends recently. When success happened, they became something else. And that doesn't have to happen, I don't think.
No.
But I think I'm ready. I'm glad that I'm not finally publishing a project of this nature. I'm glad I'm not doing it in my 20s. I'm glad that I'm doing it in my 40s. Thompson, I think, was 40 when Fear and Loathing came out. You know, that doesn't mean I haven't been working on these things that long, because I have. But to finally have some sort of, commercial but independent, but still commercial success, I think it's good that I do have the experience and the wisdom that I have now at 45, rather than where I was at 25.
Yeah.
And I guess I feel the same way about relationships as well. I think maybe I might have bitten that off a little too soon. Maybe when I get to the nursing home, I'll find my future.
Well, it's fascinating, Jen, because I've just done a conversation for this podcast with the Sealing Demons.
Right.
And one of the things we were discussing is, and I think it's kind of relates to what you just said then. I think it's a great way to sort of wrap this up anyway, was I think one of the things that truly creates people, and you know those truly creative people, not the people in it for their own ego or the people in it for short-term fame or anything, but when you do, I know I count myself in that, us truly creative people, it means almost like everything to us. I think the hardest thing we find is patting ourselves on the back and saying, good job, because we're always on to the next thing. We're always on, right, that's done, we're on to the next one. And I think so one of the wisdoms I think I've learned over my lifetime is like taking the time to go, step back and go, actually, yeah, look at what you've done, and be not in a pride way, but look and go, hey, I've left a great legacy, and I know that's why I'm excited to read what you've done, because you've just alluded on it. We've known each other for many years, and you've worked and you've done a lot, and it's always been a focus of yours. So any success that comes your way, or anything that comes your way, rightly pat yourself on the back, because you have put a lot of work into it. And not to do that is something I think us creative people, we do a lot, but I don't think it really is beneficial to us as human beings, because at the end of the day, we are human beings, you know. We have a right to say, hey, I'm proud, not in an egotistical way, but hey, it wasn't there and now it's there. You know, there was nothing and now I've done something. And that's down to you. And I would encourage you to take the moment back and, you know, and look, because you should be rightly proud of you, because you know, I haven't read a page of this yet, but I know when I do finally read it, I'm like, yeah, that's not going to surprise me, because I know how much work you've put into this. So before we do wrap this up, Jen, there's a couple of, things that need to be doing. For people listening, where can they sort of follow the project? Where can you mentioned the website and stuff? Where sort of direct people where they can follow you and find out more about what you're up to?
Sure. So I have crimecurious.com and also bathtubbooks.com, which is the independent publishing company that we've set up. So those two websites. Crime Curious is on Instagram, although I haven't really, I honestly, I could use some help with social media. Talk about distractions. This is not a good time for me to be doing Facebook and Instagram posts. I mean, so I'm going to work on Crime Curious, Instagram and Facebook, but right now it's not much to speak of. Where I'm really putting the juice is crimecurious.com and bathtubbooks.com. And it's coming along. It's coming along. And I'm not sure when this episode will be published, but as soon as this article is done, it will be available on crimecurious.com. So whoever's watching this in that time, maybe they could go right to Crime Curious and read the article that I'm slaving over right now. I was going to say too, what we were speaking on just a second ago, another go-to inspirational writer that has taught me a lot through their work is Fitzgerald. And The Great Gatsby sells more copies today in 1 year than it ever did in his lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we use words like legacy, this is, I believe that the benefits, I have 3 sons and a grandson right now. And that they're the ones that will really see the benefit of things that I do now. And I am leaving a legacy for them. And this will give them ways to learn how to deal with, different things. I don't know, but the importance of, of me leaving that legacy and encouraging future generations to do creative work, even when it seems like people are so discouraged these days from doing the creative work. I don't know. I just wanted to mention that, the book isn't to make myself rich and famous, but it will be nice to leave something for my children, or at least, for them to continue to have maybe royalties or, something like that, if I do a good enough job now. And so what we are playing with is a form of immortality.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really important to me. And I don't know if you can see it in my background, but right next to that desk, I have a peacock feather. So there's always one of those around when I'm writing as well, a peacock feather. So.
No, Jen, it's been an absolute joy and pleasure as always catching up. Right? I was saying to you the other day that I think when you meet true like-minded souls, time becomes an illusion and years can pass and you can just walk back into the conversation like it was yesterday. And it's been an absolute pleasure, Jen. And like I say, I'll definitely have to get you back on after this is published and we can have a more in-depth discussion about all this later down the line. But well, I'm going to leave you with the final word. Anything you want to sort of your final kind of thoughts or anything like that. And for those listening, before Jen gives a final thought, I would just like to say life is people, but I'll leave it to you, Jen, for the final thought.
The way that I would like to end this conversation is to tell you how proud I am of you and how thrilled I am about this resurrection. And it's great to see the ceiling demons, and I can't wait to see where you take this. And that's my final thought, is I'm proud of you.
Well, they say that life is people and that people are angels and that angels are devils and the devils are me and you.